Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Eat, Train, Prosper. Today we have a little bit different of an episode, specifically because the third word in the title of the podcast is prosper, and we want to talk a little bit about prosperity and some introspection, I should say, on our own lives in the topics or facets of business, personal development, and then, of course, training and nutrition. But before we get into this, Bryan, what's going on?
I like what you did there with prosperity. That's solid. Nice little play. I'm a little bummed over here in Boulder, Colorado at the moment because just about an hour or two ago, we found out that my nanny, who is perpetually flaky, just can never work a full week. Always finds a way to at least take one day off. That nanny just came down with COVID today, and probably not going to see her for the rest of this week or next week. And that really sucks. On top of that, we're supposed to go to Mexico. We booked a trip to Cancun at an all-inclusive resort. Next week we're supposed to leave on Wednesday. And now I don't know if we've been exposed to COVID and if we're going to get sick before we go. So we may have to cancel that trip, not take our tropical vacation, and also not have nanny coverage. And worst of all, what if my son, who goes to school, can't go to school anymore? And now we have two kids, no nanny. I literally am going to lose my mind. So that's where I'm feeling right now. My mind's a little distracted as I'm trying to kind of wrap my brain around what the next week and a half of my life might look like. But aside from that, yes, sir. Question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever run the numbers based off what you pay for a nanny and considered an au pair?
Yeah, so we absolutely have, and we have a number of friends that have an au pair, and the issue that we have is that person lives with us.
Yeah.
I don't know. We kind of want a little bit more privacy than that. We've actually gone on vacations with families that have an au pair, which is great because the au pair will take care of our kids and their kids. But every night we go to sit down and cook dinner and have dinner, and she's there, she's having dinner with us, and she doesn't speak English. So it's awkward. And we can't just kind of be ourselves and hang out with our friends.
You can get one that speaks English.
Dude, it's not even like that. It's somebody that you don't know is in your house all the time, and it becomes part of your life, and you either want that or you don't want that. And I'll just say that on the spectrum that we're on, we don't want that. But I guess maybe there is an opportunity cost at some point of maybe we can deal with that for the consistency of coverage or whatever.
Yeah, I know we, not to totally derail it, but Jenny and I have talked with when we've met up with some of her mastermind people, and they have it and they absolutely love it. So
yeah, no, it's good. It would be a similar cost. It would be really similar in cost. I think most au pairs are 35 to 40 grand a year, but you do have to pay for their food, you're giving them a place to stay, obviously, their transportation, stuff like that. So there are kind of some hidden costs in there, I guess. But anyways, aside from the despair that I'm feeling at the moment, training's been going really good. I truly enjoy my new cycle thus far. The weird kind of splitting up that I've done where I have 6 sessions over a 9-ish day period. And it's been really good. I feel every time I reach a session that I'm supposed to be training a certain muscle group, it feels recovered and I'm ready to go, and motivation's been high. And sessions aren't taking terribly long, 60, 90 minutes, which is pretty standard for me. So overall, couldn't be happier. Love the new movements I'm trying out on the functional trainer. Today I got a sweet lumbar lat row in, which you and I had discussed in prior episodes, how much we love that one, and it delivered. So today was super solid there as well. And I don't know what's going on with you, man.
Training. Not much. Still kind of in that same period. I haven't been training that much, and it is honestly, the real reason is because of what I'm going to get into. I have reached a capacity with my business where what has gotten me to here will no longer get me further. And basically, I need new skills and habits around efficiency, delegation of things, and basically getting things out of my brain. So what was a strength when I was, first starting my business and getting me here is like, I can just remember a lot of what I need to do. And I've been fortunate, but now I'm like maxing out those capacities. So delegation, I have a great VA, like shout out Maddie. She's been helping with a lot of the cool new graphics and stuff we're seeing with, Eat, Train, Prosper and different things. We have a video editor now, so shout out Evan, who does all the video editing for Eat, Train, Prosper and the audio editing. And, him and I have just landed on a really nice workflow just to like remove me from parts of things that allow me to just to focus on coaching and making sure that I am never unwavering in my delivery of my coaching to my clients, because that's what's my reputation. The whole reason I'm doing a lot of this, right, is because of that. So just understanding that and putting in new structures for myself that allow me to continue to deliver, and then really just not take from other aspects of my life. I could, over the past like 8 weeks, I could tell where like things like I'd start going to bed a little bit later and my sleep was starting to suffer, and like the motivation to go to the gym wasn't there because it was an opportunity cost of time. Like, fuck, I really can't disappear for like 2.5 hours, because I need to do these other things. And I just don't want to let circumstances dictate, the decisions that I make. Instead, like everything is in my control. It's my business, it's my half of the podcast type of thing. Like there are ways to solve this without just like taking on that stress and pressure. And I'm just finally now doing that. So that is my big update, just that realization. And I'm really excited about it because then it's going to just free up parts of my life and allow me to continue to practice what I preach. And that's something that always has been kind of like iffy for me, because I'd be like, fuck, it's 10 p.m. Like I'm still at my computer. I need to go to bed, because I refuse to be that coach that says like, do as I say, not as I do type of thing. Like I want to be I lead by example and continue to be. So that's when I knew it was time I need to address things. So that is here, and I'm very, very happy about it, and excited to just continue going down that path.
Yeah, totally, dude. Finding people to do the things that you don't want to do is like the best idea you've ever had. I mean, because your time is worth so much more than doing those kind of admin style tasks,
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that feeds nicely into our first category of what has gotten us here, which is business. So do you want to kick this off, talk about kind of your journey and what along the business realm has kind of led to where you are today?
Yeah. So kind of my thought for an idea for the episode is we've been getting a lot more questions from like newer, and I'm sure you do, because I mean, you've been at this game so much longer than I have. Just around like scaling and delivery and basically just how I operate. And it's just kind of had me like thinking, because I'm going to be completely transparent. Like the whole idea of being an entrepreneur was something that I never wanted. And so much of that is because it was tied to like, I have come a long way, but I have just a lot of like social anxiety tendencies, and I don't do well in like groups and like, explaining who I am and what I do sort of thing. So that was always like a big fear of mine. So I was like, oh, I can just sit in this company and not do anything, of those sorts, until I realized I wasn't going to be able to live the type of life that I wanted to with that. So in terms of like with kind of getting here with business has always been really trying to I don't want to say focus on being different, but not letting the trends in the masses sway what I knew, to be true and what will work. So that is something that I will kind of still struggle with, because like let's face it, Bryan, like you've been in the fitness industry for so long, and like, a lot of it is just like it's poor quality. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, and that is where I was like, I just had an idea that I'm going to stand out and be different by just really focusing on the quality, explaining things, and not taking the like, oh, eat these foods, eat these foods, do this, type of deal. And I feel like I've been fortunate that has paid off, and I'm now kind of just digging my heels in even deeper and going that route. So that's how I kind of feel in that aspect of it. What are your thoughts there with that, and then for yourself? Because there's been a lot of reinvention of Bryan over the years.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where to take this. Like I'm for some reason I feel myself being directed to talk about something that maybe fits into more of the personal development category first.
And we talked about that because with our style of businesses, it is a lot of our like life as well. So for sure.
Yeah. Throughout the years, especially since I started making fitness my profession as well, which I guess would be around like 2009, 2010. I've kind of struggled with this idea of everything that I do being singularly focused on fitness. So it's almost like mitigating to having a hobby or like being able to learn a new instrument, or not that I like want to learn a new instrument, but like if there was like something I wanted to do that was unrelated to fitness, right? It feels like I'm constricted almost in this lifestyle. And in so many ways I'm blessed. Like I would say if someone were to ask me, what part of you feels as if you're so happy to be where you are versus the side of you that's like thinking the grass is greener on the other side, or like, what if I had more time to do this, or my whole identity wasn't tied to fitness, And I would say I'm like 96, 97% just like amped that this is my life, But that 3 or 4% is enough that I find myself kind of reflecting on it sometimes and just missing the opportunity to find and devour a new passion. Like it just feels like I don't have that time. So starting on a negative note there, I wanted to put that out there really as unrelated to a lot else, just because I don't know if others struggle with this as well, if you've been in the industry for a while, or even if you do. But it even like expands into social situations, which is something that you brought up too, because my identity is so fitness based, right? My profession and my passion are one. So when I'm in social situations with people that aren't involved in fitness, or maybe it's just like a very small portion of their life and it's never anything that even like comes up in their daily conversations, they just go to the gym and then they move on with life, right? I find myself sometimes struggling to connect with these people. And also being ill-informed on a lot of topics that I wish I was more informed on. So anyways, those are my my negative thoughts to kick off the conversation. Do you relate to any of that?
I do. However, I kind of come to it from a different angle, because there used to be like Aaron who just loved lifting weights and got into nutrition and stuff. And then there was a professional Aaron, which was software. However, I think where my perspective is a little bit different is like the software Aaron was like, this is just a means to pay my bills. I don't fucking care about this stuff. What I care about is like fitness and nutrition, And then once I, ultimately made that decision, like I'm not going down this path anymore. I'm going to like reinvent my life. Now everything feels like this is just Aaron, and Aaron happens to just get paid through things he already does too. I think for me personally, it all comes down to desire, because there are times where I'm in those like or different kind of social structures where, people aren't into like fitness and stuff. And this might come off as kind of, dickheaded, and I really don't mean it in that manner, but like oftentimes I just don't want to fucking be there,
Yeah.
Like there's people who, and they do different things in life. I'm not saying they're bad people or whatever, but if we're like, sitting around, if I go to some dinner or whatever and people are like, oh yeah, let's, talk about like no, don't get me wrong, I do actually like hockey. That's a bad example. But like the NBA playoffs or something like that, like I couldn't fucking care any less. And I would be like, you know what? If the option would be to like go to this dinner and talk about the NBA, or just go to sit at Chipotle by myself and go home, like I'm going to take the latter and be happy as shit. And I think for me, it's just realizing what those desires really are. And for me, like that's just being completely honest. And that may shift, and that's something that to be completely transparent, I'm kind of concerned about as I move into that next phase of life, like fatherhood and that sort of thing. And be like, oh, I have to go hang out with, my kids,
other dads
friends.
that don't work out.
Yeah, they're going to be like in their late 20s and I'll be in my fucking 40s. And
eating pizza and cupcakes, and you're just like, oh man,
I don't want to be here. So that's like something that it's a valid concern of mine. But in that regard, but I do agree with having the other hobbies and type of stuff is it's opportunity cost. And this is something that I've very, very much been having right now. Full disclosure, I'm big into like digital assets, cryptocurrencies, especially like DeFi and that sort of thing. However, it's opportunity cost of time that I can be spending on the business. And that is always very difficult for me to find that balance. So I totally agree with where you are and understanding that. I'm hopeful that maybe in like the next year to 2 years that I can have a little bit more balance. But right now it's just scaling the business in delivery and the kind of the messaging that I feel is very, very important. I'm not satisfied with where I'm at yet, and to
Yeah.
give myself a little bit more of that balance.
Well, when we kind of circle it back to what has gotten us here, and then we look at that kind of monologue that I just went on, I think that we could look at that singular focus as possibly a liability in like personal development, but potentially an asset in business. And so that's kind of the route that I would approach it as we kind of delve into this conversation, is that asset of being singularly focused has been the catalyst that has kind of propelled me through this fitness space and kind of helped to get me where I am today. So like you kind of alluded to, when we're in corporate America and we want to learn about fitness, that's an auxiliary thing. That's like, that is a passion, a hobby that I need to now find time outside of my job to do. But in the other construct, in this world where it's an asset, then now as I am sitting at the CrossFit gym, between running classes and working out and running a business and things like that, I devour information. I read everything. I'm on the internet. I'm reading books. I'm trying to learn my craft as much as I can. I'm watching, tutorial videos on Olympic lifting. And suddenly this stuff is all work. This is important stuff for me to do, but it's also what I want to do. And so there's like a really beautiful kind of connection there.
You couldn't have said that any better. And I think something that's allowed both of us to kind of get where we are now, because of that pairing of like desire and professional
Yeah.
type thing. And I know that with that, like kind of shifting into personal development a little bit, I think it's a little bit different because the parallels are very, very close, because of we are not, I don't necessarily, well, we just talked about this. We're not quite solopreneurs anymore. There's like, team members and that sort of thing in partnerships. But the personal development angle I look at in terms of like, what can I do to become like more efficient, right? I actually had this is really funny. One of my like best friends that I've known since we were like 8 years old texted me the other day, and he was like, I feel like you're getting smarter. Like, I'm listening to your podcast, the way you speak, and I'm like, this isn't the person that I knew. Like, you were not like this before. And it was funny because I feel like the same. I feel like I am. I'll be 34 in like a month, but I feel like I'm still like actively getting smarter, which is like really wild to me. I'm acquiring new skills. Things that I used to suck at are now like my strengths, like this, speaking live on camera, where like just not fumbling over my words. I like, that was to be an absolute nightmare for me, but I'm now just through one, caring about what I'm talking about, right? That's a big one. Mm-hmm. And just like repetition and feeling convicted in my purpose around it, it's become like a strength of mine. And with that, for the personal development, like what has kind of gotten me here is just like the desire to want to be a more capable human being. And it's coupled with the training and nutrition, because like, let's face it, in terms of becoming a more capable human being, being strong, being physically fit, like those are very real, facets of being capable. And then the nutrition and lifestyle side of things, like when you're just feeding yourself, a more quality diet, when you are just consuming nutrient dense foods, when you're sleeping, all of these things like transition really, really well into you like performing and feeling good, and just kind of removing barriers for you to flourish in those like capabilities and stuff. So I think that's been like, the personal development side has come as like now it's more like I wanted to discover what I can do, but the training and the nutrition definitely were like the first, steps that pushed me down that path.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I may have mentioned this on an episode recently, but I feel like training and nutrition and the lifestyle that we're living has contributed so broadly to so many different aspects of my life, like the way that I think about things, or put things into little boxes in my head and kind of categorize things, like a lot of these things that are these lessons that I've learned from training that I apply then to personal life. And beyond that, it's even provided me like an outlet, right? Like a lot of people start lifting because they're angry, or like, you know, they're letting out steam or stuff like that. And I wouldn't say that that's the case for me, because I do tend to run more of like a type B personality. But I do think that part of why I have this like more chill demeanor is because that's been something that I do since I was 15. It's just every week I show up, you know, 3 to 5 times, and I lift weights and I work hard, and it makes me feel good, and it allows me to just be a better person in the other aspects of my life too.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with the kind of with the personal development, right? The concept of like mastery of self, right? Or and it's a continuum, right? You never really quite get there. I think it's like, hey, I'm just moving
Yeah.
further along on this spectrum. And in my mind, like the physical side of things, if we think of like self as like, you know, well, we can think of it as like 3 parts, right? You have like a physical part, you know, a mental part, and then maybe some people would include like a spiritual soul, you know, aspect as well.
Yep.
In my opinion, the physical part is by far the most easiest to make the most headway on, and that will kind of pave the path to other aspects, you know, like the mental. I think like mastery of the physical self is orders of magnitude easier to do than the mind. But through basically getting reps in and building momentum with the physical, you can kind of make some headway into the you know, mental aspects. And then in terms of that tertiary factor, I'm the wrong person to talk to about that. I don't, there are tons of people who are super, super into that. It's just something that I haven't really delved into on my, you know, evolution of a human being yet.
Kim, my wife, is super into kind of the spiritual stuff. She does the meditating and all of that. So she's kind of been at me, like pushing me to try and get into it a little bit. And I'm more like you. I'm very like grounded and scientific, and like it's a little difficult for me to get there. But I feel like, you know, she's gotten so much benefit from it that I feel like there's definitely value there.
I agree. I think 100% there is definitely value there. I haven't been, you know, I haven't just bought into doing it consistently enough. There's been times where I've done it for like, you know, like a month at a time or something like that. And I would agree. The benefit 100% is there. It's just really hard for me. And I think like that barrier to entry it's just difficult for me. And I will say that, but I 100% agree. I think there's a lot of benefit there.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to kind of talk about in terms of like business or personal development that you think has kind of like shifted you to like where you are now?
I think we've talked so much about our transition, you know, from CrossFit into the hypertrophy space in past episodes, that like that's a super relevant part of this, I think, is that transition, because it was so critical in kind of getting us to where we are now versus still being within the culture of CrossFit. But I don't know that we need to necessarily spend time talking about that again.
Agreed. One thing I will say, and because and the whole reason I wanted to have this episode is I know I get a lot of these questions and stuff, and I know you do. And this might come from, man, it might seem like I'm talking about it it's going to come off kind of negative, but just know that I don't really mean it in that aspect. When I was first starting, like, you know, Straker Nutrition Company and moving into this brand new world of like being an entrepreneur, I think I got really lucky in the way that my girlfriend and I designed it, in that we kind of burned the bridges, right? We got rid of every single thing we had and moved to the other side of the world. And I mean, she had been once. I'd been to like America, the United States, and I've been to like Tijuana like twice to watch pro wrestling. Other than that, I'd never left the United States, and just showed up in Vietnam one day. I don't think I would have succeeded if I was still around my existing social structures, friends, those creature comforts, because when you're trying to do something new that you never have done, and that wall in front of you seems like infinitely tall, a lot of those like creature comforts and social structures, and it's like, oh, it's your roommate's girlfriend's 27th birthday and we're meeting at, you know, some fucking restaurant you don't care about. Like those things pull you away from that goal. And what I did was I basically just like cut them all off, you know? And then fortunately, being I believe when we first moved, like the time zone difference was like 13 hours. So there was only like a 2 or 3 hour gap in, when I woke up and when I went to bed, to where like me and everyone I knew was awake
Yeah.
at the same time. So I had like 12 hours of the day, or maybe like 9 or 10, it actually is, where I was just like by myself. I like, there weren't like Instagram messages coming in, there weren't like emails coming in. So I could literally just build. And for me, that was like that just the removal of distraction was incredible. And I think like us kind of taking this lifestyle and being just away from everyone, and now that like we see friends in random cities and stuff, but we're largely like to ourselves, that has been a massive plus in allowing us to build the businesses, as I mean, I'm not going to say quickly. Jenny did it quickly. Like I'm now in year 3 and finally kind of like am hitting my stride. And I think that was really, really beneficial for me, as terrible as it is to say, to like leave all of my friends and family. But in 2019, Aaron did not have the like, fortitude and understanding of being able to do that with all of those, I hate to call them distractions, but friends and family around. I don't think I would have succeeded. So just kind of burning those, ships and going was very, very beneficial for me to get here. I firmly believe that.
Well, it seems like you've matured a lot over the last 3 years in that way.
However, a lot of those relationships have struggled because of those decisions.
For sure. I would say mine was much more gradual than that. My transition outright, I didn't cut bridges. In fact, I continued to work at the CrossFit gym while I was trying to build Evolved from the ground up. So I cut my CrossFit schedule down so that I was running, I think, 7 classes a week, and I was only running, I think it was 2 on Tuesday, 2 on Monday, and 3 on Wednesday. So I had like 7 classes. They were all in the beginning of the week. And that would allow me like a 4-day period from Thursday to Sunday where I could focus more on kind of building the new business and getting that message out and working on programming and stuff like that. So it was hard for me in the sense of building the business because of the tie to CrossFit, but also in actual training. It took me, a year to go through that gradual progression from where I was hardcore CrossFitting to like not CrossFitting, where I would say that maybe that's actually part of the success, because the first program I created for Evolved was the original Evolved program, which was built in like a hybrid approach. That was kind of what I was doing at that time, where I was like wading my toes into physique sport, but also, still Olympic lifting and doing muscle ups and things like that. So I think that maybe that was part of the success. It helped my programming. It helped me reach an audience that I was already reaching. So it's weird when you look at my Instagram following, and this is kind of a weird tangent to take, but like when I was in CrossFit, I think I was at like, when I was finishing up CrossFit, I was like 12 or 12,500 followers. And I went through a period when I transitioned from CrossFit into physique for like a 2-year period where my Instagram didn't grow at all. I would be constantly getting new followers in the like physique space or bodybuilding or whatever. But I think I'd be losing just as many followers from like the CrossFit side that were like, what is this guy talking about? It's not CrossFit anymore. Like he's kind of lost it type thing. So like for 2 years, I didn't gain any followers or lose any followers. I think I was at like 13,000 2 years later, which means I gained like 400 followers. And then since then, I think it's like all the CrossFit people are gone now, or the ones that are going to unfollow me. And so now it's kind of starting to grow again. And so I think that maybe is an example and a microcosm of kind of the way that my gradual progression went out of CrossFit and into physique.
Yeah. One thing and this is like a perfect segue. So I might be a little biased, right? Might be a little bit of confirmation bias because I was already in like the Bryan Borstein ecosystem and stuff like that. But I was like, looking back on it, I feel like you were just kind of ahead of your time with like when you I remember when you introduced like the strong classes and it was like it was like set up similar to like a CrossFit class, but we were just doing like hypertrophy in the back, and it was
that was like 2014.
It was very, very different. And now what's crazy is like I'm years removed of the CrossFit space and stuff, but every once in a while there'll be like an Instagram account that will like pop back up, and it was like someone I used to follow when I was super into CrossFit, and like no one's doing it anymore. Everyone's into like physique stuff. And I'm just like, oh,
Yeah,
fuck.
yeah.
And they're like, oh, wow, this person was just on stage. Like they got into bodybuilding. And I was like, I feel like you were just super, super ahead. And it's kind of wild is I kind of just want to kind of see if we can peel back a little bit and just see like what you think led to a little bit of that foresight. And even like when we were doing our CrossFit stuff, you were early in like we were periodizing. I remember when you came and said like, hey, we're not doing any CrossFit. Like now regionals is over. It's, whatever, it's June 1st. We're just going to, go through like a combination powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting cycle until like October. And I'm like, what? We're not doing any CrossFit? This is so stupid. But then like 2 months in, I'm like, yo, I never want to go back because this is so much fun. I don't feel like I'm dying anymore. And it's just like, I don't know, like what do you think made you have that kind of like foresight? And what do you think maybe, I mean, I feel like this is stuff that we've talked about for like the last month with a lot of the biomechanics and stuff, but like what other, is there anything else you think might be on like the tip of your mind now that in 3 years, everyone will be doing type of deal?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. To address the first part, so I think it's twofold as to kind of how I ended up that transition into physique, like so early on, I guess. But that was my background, as we've talked about on here. Like I always did more bodybuilding strength training for, man, if I didn't start CrossFit till 2009, I was training for like 12 years before I started CrossFit. So that was really all I knew before CrossFit. So that was like, even when I started CrossFit, one of the non-negotiables that I told Anders was that we always had to have a primary focus on strength and hypertrophy work. And then we Metcon. And so that was always kind of one of the guiding principles of the programming for our gym from the get-go. And that is why I think every time we would go to regionals, we would be the strongest gym or one of the top 2 strongest gyms there. But potentially also speaks to my bias in that we weren't always the most conditioned gym there. So maybe some of the things that really helped me be on the forefront of this transition back into the physique world are also the things that maybe held me back personally in my conditioning, but also maybe in a small way, like some of the gym. Like, I don't think it was a pervasive fault of my programming that I always, over prioritized strength work and hypertrophy work. But I would say that I probably had stints where I under prioritized metabolic conditioning and going, long 20 to 30 minute type stuff and like doing those things that really hurt, but also kind of really fucked up your hormones. So for whatever reason, because I started in CrossFit pretty early, like 2009 is pretty early as far as, CrossFit is concerned, given that the games started in like 2007 or 2008. So I think because I was an early adopter, it also had an effect that led to me being an early exiter. Because you kind of see this as a lifespan of a CrossFitter, right? Like almost everybody has 4 to 8 years, depending on, like, women generally have more because they're more resilient. Guys tend to kill themselves too quickly and maybe burn out earlier, or somewhere in that 4 to 8 year range, I think is pretty standard if you're really going at CrossFit with that competitive vibe. So it's not a surprise to me that we now see the people that were like at the games in 2012, like doing physique shows and shit, right? Like they've also realized that this isn't sustainable. For sure, coaching and nutrition methods have gotten better. So you have like freaks like Noah Olson that are like still out there doing it at a really high level, which is amazing and a huge testament to him. But I also think, like, the coaching is better. So he's not actually out there killing himself in a stupid manner like we were every single day for a year. Like, he is also doing periodized training that has periods where he's just lifting. And actually, I think Noah Olson maybe was one of those people that just did a physique thing. Either that or I think he cut down to 180 and took pictures. If you look on his Instagram from like 2 months ago, there's a picture of him at like 180 and he's pretty shredded. I mean, he still has that like super big blocky waist. But he looks pretty good. And I think he usually sits at like 205 or something like that. So that's definitely a different Noah Olson, but kind of, I got a little carried away off tangent there, but I do think that for the most part, people realize after X number of years that as they get older, their bodies become less resilient this focus on movement quality, on recovery being such a big one. Like, so many people don't even know that physique is a recovery game. I had a girl DM me today and she was like, hey, so I want to start the physique program, but I coach CrossFit and I'm also a competitive CrossFitter. Like, how would you recommend I kind of combine these together? And I was like, well, physique is a recovery game. We need diagnostics. We need to know if the reason things are working or not working is because of volume and effort and all of these different variables. Like, when you're constantly varied and throwing all of these different things at it, we're not going to have any information. We're not going to be able to know whether it's actually working. Like, so kind of it's almost perfect for this episode because that was me, 6 years ago, transitioning out of CrossFit. Like, how can I combine all of this together? And ultimately, you try to do that and then you realize that it's futile because it has the same effect as just doing CrossFit, except maybe even worse because you're doing CrossFit plus other stuff. And then your body kind of begins to shit the bed and you slowly begin maneuvering yourself closer and closer to that more low intensity recovery sport approach.
Yeah. Okay. That was a really good way to put that. And it's funny. I mean, obviously we have so many parallels, but yeah, I know like that was me to a T, just trying to do too much, not recovering. And I guess you don't prioritize it until things hit like an inflection point where you realize that you feel terrible and you're not happy and, what's the point type of thing. And where things will kind of, life has a way of putting some things in perspective for you there.
I legit dreaded workouts. I remember as I was finally making the decision to stop doing CrossFit, there was open workouts or prep for open or whatever it was. And I would wake up in the morning and just the first thought I had would be like, oh my God, we have that 20-minute AMRAP with toes to bar today, and it's like my whole soul just drops. And then I do the workout, but I hate it the whole time. And then I'm on the ground miserable for 30 minutes and then I can't focus and my brain is mush. And it just was enough of those kind of situations in a row. And that was that catalyst for me, I think.
There was a period where, because and there's some level of that traditional macho toxic male energy masochist type of thing where it's I want to do this because it's really hard and therefore it's rewarding type of thing. But there got to a point I think what was one of the really big kickers for me is when we had to do those hill sprints up Tourmaline after we trained. I would get back in my truck and just sit in the truck for 20 minutes before I would even fucking drive to 4 blocks home. And I would just be I fucking hate this. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And I think it kind of that was the point for me. I was I'm just I don't enjoy this anymore. And some of it was friends had moved away and they were removed the competitive type nature thing. But it was I just my desires had changed. And I think that was kind of what pushed me back towards just finding new things, and I don't know. I just love the evolution of everything and how you find different things and how things come in and out of importance in your life. But I'm obviously very, very grateful for those years. There would be none of what I have now without those years, And I really like the longevity thing because I feel everyone except one person in my mind who we're actually going to have on the podcast in 2 weeks, has gone through that evolution and they kind of get chewed up and spit out. And I'm super excited to talk with this one person on why they are different. So that will be very, very cool.
No, yeah, she's a badass and she's been doing this thing for a really long time. So that should be a good episode for everybody in 2 weeks. And then we actually have another guest next week as well, right?
Yep. So we'll have two
so we have guests back-to-back weeks, which will be super cool. And I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts, anything to add on the training, nutrition stuff?
No.
I had one more thought. So it sparked from your hill sprint comment. And I still, even in 2022, we still have this kind of pervasive idea that you see across Instagram and in the industry where people misconstrue this idea of training for work capacity or metabolic effect or something like that. They confuse those difficult, challenging workouts where you end up, breathing hard and sweating and stuff like that. They confuse those as the optimal way to achieve the body that they want. And if that's the way that you enjoy training, and you legitimately can tell me that, like, you know, if there was another option, like, you would still choose this option because you absolutely love doing this type of workout, then that's fine. Like, that can get you close to potentially whatever your ideal physique is. But you don't have to. So, like, you can train with straight sets, a couple intensity techniques here and there, and mostly rest between your sets and not have to feel awful during your training, and your body can look as good or better than it can look doing the, you know, high work capacity type training. So it's surprising to me that there's still that much misinformation out there, but then at the same time, it's like not surprising to me because the internet is full of misinformation, and most of the people with the most influence don't have a clue of what they're talking about. So anyway, on that positive note, I think that, you know, take a deep look at yourself and what you actually enjoy in your training. And then maybe as you begin to kind of align up what you enjoy, not just what you think you should do, but what you want to do, maybe that actually will align better with the physical goals that you actually have.
That is such a great way to end the episode. Yeah. Just like, you don't have to kill yourself to look good. There's like, it's not like they exist in different parallels. So yeah, just know that. Anything else on this one, Bryan?
Nah, man, we good.
Cool. As always, guys, thank you for listening. Bryan and I will talk to you next week with a guest.